Okay, tonight we're going to look at a quick example of how to get your notes and your research into an actual paper. So what I've done is I've started a Word document. I've put a header up here on the top left and I've named it. So this is my research paper on how flipping a house can flip your bank account. And here's my introduction. You'll notice it's just nonsense. It's just there for looks. And then at the end of my introduction is my thesis, buying a cheap house and flipping it, the modern term for refurbishing at a low cost to make a profit, can be risky, but when done well can be very profitable. So my research paper is going to be about how to flip a house. So what we're going to look at is how to get your research actually into your paper and what that looks like. Okay, so remember that this is what the what your note-taking sheet looks like. Okay, it looks something like this. And what I'm going to sort of do is fill it out with you as we go along. So this particular note sheet is going to answer the question, how do you flip a house? And I went and I found a website that I liked. It was a credible source. It's from CNBC, and it's 5 tips for big returns on house flipping. Okay, so that's what I'm taking notes off of. Okay, so number 1 says do the math. Figure out what you can spend on both the house and the renovation down to the last dollar, and include how much risk you are prepared to take. Okay, so I want to write that note down. Okay, so I'm going to write that in the notes section or something similar to that. Okay, so that's what I write here. Figure out what you can spend on the house and the renovations down to the last dollar and decide how much risk you are willing to take. So that's basically what that website just said, right? Okay, now I want to see what other notes I can get from this website. So number 2 says know your market. So this paragraph talks about doing your homework on recent sales and average days on the market to get an idea of how long to hold the property before flipping, and is it a good school community, etc. Okay, so the note that I took from that is know the market that you are buying and selling in it so that you can price the house appropriately. Okay, and then the third area that I wanted to take notes on was about know the buyer and renovate with that buyer in mind. So this talks about how you need to make the house accessible or desirable for a specific buyer. So you need to know who's going to be looking in that area. Are there schools, or is it an older neighborhood, etc. So the note that I wrote for that section was to know the buyer and what they are looking for in a house. Okay, pretty much what that paragraph said. Okay, so now I want to take these notes and I want to paraphrase it. I want to put it into my own words. Okay, just for time's sake, we're only going to focus on this very first note. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to paraphrase that and put it into my own words, and then put it into that paraphrase section of my note sheet. So I'm going to start with paraphrasing. Remember, paraphrasing, you don't want any words from the original text. This is pretty close to the original, so I don't want to use any of this. I want to use my own words. So I'm going to put what this said, and I'm going to put it in my own words. So how did I do that? Well, I start with, maybe something a little bit different but related. Before buying a house to flip, it is important to decide on a budget. Well, that's true. That was the number 1 thing that that website said, and it still goes along with this note, but this note doesn't say anything about it. It's all in my own words. The budget must include cost of the house plus the cost of the renovations. This says exactly that. It means the same thing, but it's in my own words. Flippers or houses that are more expensive and need more renovations are a larger risk than cheaper houses with, oh, look, let's see, I edited that again. A more expensive house might be less of a risk because the renovation costs will be less and there may be less surprises, while cheaper houses are likely to need significant renovations, which also means time. Okay, so that's talking about the risk. Okay, so I sort of put some of my own words in there too to really make sure it was my own. Okay, and then the last thing that comes is the documentation. So I want to go ahead and write the MLA citation for this web page. So I know that the author is Diana Olick. The name of the article is House Flipping 5 Tips for Big Returns. It's on CSNBC. Let's see the publisher. The publisher is CSNBC LLC. The date it was published was May 27th, 2015. It's on the web, and I'm accessing it today. Okay, so my documentation is going to look like this. Okay, all that information I just needed. Okay, now I want to put this paraphrase into my paper. I don't want to put the notes section because that was too close to the original. I want to put the paraphrase section into my paper. Okay, so I'm going to start this my first body paragraph. The first step to flipping a house is to decide on a budget. Okay, so that's my topic sentence. That's what this whole paragraph is going to be about. And then, can I copy and paste this paraphrase into my paper? Well, sure. That's your words. Okay, as long as it's your words, you can copy it. So I copied and pasted that into my paper, and that's here. But it is a paraphrase from a different source. So I do have to put a parenthetical or in-text citation at the end of it. Okay, so this tells me that all these sentences that preceded are from this source Olick. Okay, well, what if I'm reading it, I'm an audience, whatever, and I'm reading this essay and I want to find out more about this person Olick who wrote this, who wrote about flipping houses in a budget. Where do I find out more information about her? Well, I'm going to scroll down to the Works Cited page and look at here. The student has copy and pasted or rewritten, retyped, whatever, the documentation that you wrote here on to a Works Cited page. And that is how you put research into your paper. So I know everywhere that you have the last name Olick behind the sentence that information came from this source.